Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At-Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay-at-home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight, got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet, cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, Danny, how you doing today?
Brock, I'm all right. Been a long day so far. How about you?
I completely concur with you. It has definitely been a long day, that's for sure.
Like every day.
Yes, sir. Like every day, 2 kids running around the house, all that stuff, and you got your 4, so I'm sure they keep you on your toes.
Definitely trying. They always come up and go, "Oh, look at the old man." I'm like, you're not as young as you think.
Yeah, today's one of those days where it's time to crack open a barrel-aged beer and enjoy it while having a good conversation with you today.
Nice. Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, man, I wonder, every once in a while you get out and you get around folks, and I'm sure, before the pandemic, you get around guys and talk to them. You ever get the question, hey, what do you do for a living?
Oh yeah. I mean, every time. I don't think there's ever been a conversation that I've had with another man where he didn't ask me what I did for a living. That's just top first thing.
I think it's a question that, it just rolls off the tongue in a conversation so smoothly for most people because it's something that you can find some commonality with.
Right. Just some frame of reference so they can, and it really too, I've always so they're looking to put you in a cubby, basically, or in a spot. Say, okay, so are you like blue collar, white collar? Where are you? And then they know what kind of frame of reference they have, like I said, to who they are compared to who you are. What you do for a living, for a lot of men, completely determines who they are as a person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, there's some good and bad that comes with that question. And this was a question that came to us through the closed National At-Home Dad group page. And, one of the guys in there we were talking with, just asking questions about what they wanted to discuss. And his question was, like, how do you answer that question? Like, what do you do for a living when you're the stay-at-home dad and you are talking to somebody that is out there in the workforce? And I completely understand where you might have some reservations on how you want to answer that question. But I feel like, it's one of those things where just as much as someone who is in the workforce can assert themselves in saying, confidently, like, this is what I do for a living.
Yes.
We as stay-at-home dads need to assert that confidence in what our role is as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, it's been a few years ago, but the hashtag that was going around at one of the conventions actually was hashtag own it. And just, own what you do. There's no shame in what we do. The amount of time it takes to do this job, the fact that it never stops. And I think the biggest thing with a lot of men, because we don't get a paycheck in this, there's no, weekly or biweekly or monthly. Here's a piece of paper with an amount on it that says this is your worth. And for a lot of us, we grew up with the idea of I have to have a paycheck to define who I am as a man, who I am as a dad even, and talking about making, I provide for my family. Well, I do too. It's just not financial. The provisions that I offer are way more than I could put on a piece of paper right down for a paycheck.
Yeah. And I don't know, like maybe it's different down south to where it is up here in the north of whatever. But I think regionally, sometimes you get different perspective from different guys when you talk to them about, how they answer that question, who they're talking to, and that kind of thing. I feel like up here, it's not as much of a shock. What I get is like, oh man, like, from women, it seems like I always get, man, I wish my husband could do that or something along those lines, which I'm always like, you sure? You might want to check with him, make sure that that's something that he wants to do too.
Yep.
But I think that more than that is just the idea of like, oh, that's so wonderful or whatever. When you say, you're a stay-at-home dad, and typically I think that comes from like mostly like when I talk to like older women or just, stay-at-home moms or nannies or whatever it is. But when it comes to talking to a dad about it, like I get all kinds of mixed answers. Like why, what, you can't find a job, like, or what's going on, like they just, they don't get it. But what's cool is that if they're open to it, they'll listen to you and understand why it is that you took on this role.
Mm-hmm.
My thing, one, I agree, like own it. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stay-at-home dad. Or in my case, I always like to say I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, too, there are some guys who will answer it with like, well, I dabble in whatever it is. Like
Yeah, I'm a photographer part
yeah,
time, or
exactly. I'm a
something like
photographer
that.
part
Yeah.
time or something, which
Yeah.
is fine. Like, hey, I get it. If you're making money off of it, you're a professional photographer. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the primary caregiver, like, it doesn't hurt anything to say that. Like,
Yeah.
honestly, it just brings that
Well,
attitude to it.
it can be almost embarrassing at times. And again, because we're so often judged by, again, people are, men, I should say, are putting us in a spot or in a cubby. This is who you are.
Right.
And you hear somebody, well, all I do is take care of my family. All I do is take care of my kids. I spend all day, changing dirty diapers or whatever. And there's this automatic thought of, oh, well, you're less of a man because of that. And that's in a way understandable. We have had that culturally for generations, that this is not something that a man should do. That's not who we are anymore. That's definitely not who we're going to be over the next few years to a decade, what have you, where we're really seeing more and more men get involved. Maybe not full time. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to do it full time. I'll say a lot of people can't, but just being involved with your kids, no one should be able to put you down for that. Now they might still try. They might not have they may be ignorant of what it's all about, but the reality of it is what you're doing for your kids, even if it's just, well, I'm working less hours this week or every week. I get off early on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My boss said it was okay or what have you, so that I can go and pick up my son or daughter at their sports game, whatever, whether, pick them up at soccer, or I can watch them, or I can take them. Being involved in your kid's life, thinking about 20 years from now, your kid's going to look back and go, every Tuesday, every Thursday, Dad would show up and drag me to go play football or whatever. And I didn't want, I just went, I always had a good time. But, every time I looked up in the stands, he was there. He was watching me. He was involved in me, in my life. And that's a huge thing for your self-worth as a person, to be able to look at, well, my parents, not only do they say they love me, but they're involved in my life. It's something I think that we should really be able to own without any issues. But again, we're looking at a lot of generational stuff that it's kind of hard to fight.
Right. And you're down in Georgia. So what's the reaction when you tell folks that you're a stay-at-home dad?
Well, I will say almost to a T, every single woman that I have told it to has been delighted. They've all been, they get that. We talk a lot about the unnecessary compliments, like, oh, you're such an amazing dad. You're doing, and no, I'm doing the same thing that a mom does. It's not any big deal. But
Right.
beyond that, there's a big thought of, I really wish my husband or my dad or my son even could see what their value is in being home with their kids the whole time. And then a lot of them were, stay-at-home moms. I've talked to like several teachers that are my age or a little bit older, and they had been a stay-at-home mom until their kids grew up and went to college, and then they went and got a degree and became a teacher. And it's just an amazing life that you have in doing that. So with that part, it really hasn't been a problem. It's actually been pretty funny, because we'll end up standing around and we'll be at a school gathering or whatever. And I'm standing there talking to all the moms, and all the dads are over in the corner just kind of staring at each other. But getting into what the dads say, is it's been a little bit different. There's a lot of acceptance, which I was really surprised at. I was expecting a fair amount of pushback on it, or even honestly ridicule or mockery. I really didn't know what I would get, but it wouldn't have surprised me, because I feel like it's very unusual. And beyond that, though, I ran into a lot of dads that were just very supportive. They were like, oh, that's cool. I could never do that. I don't know how you do what you do. There's no way. And I told them, this is the hardest job I have ever had.
I think those dads that actually react that way, they actually respect what their wives are doing, their spouses are doing at home, because they see, if their spouse is at home being the stay-at-home parent, they see that. So for a dad to say, like, I'm doing that role, it probably does flip the switch and open the eyes of like, whoa, like, I already know what she goes through.
Yep.
I couldn't even imagine myself doing that. So that's really cool that you've got guys that are coming at it that way.
It's been pretty good. I haven't really had anybody with any big issues. Everybody's been more or less supportive. Yeah, it's actually been, and again, I didn't know what to expect. I always kind of expect the worst in something like that. It's like, so that I can be prepared for it, and then anything else is better. But yeah, it's been pretty good for me. How about you?
I'll say this. I think that one of the things, and this is probably the thing I would believe that the person who wrote this question to us is trying to get at, is the idea of how do you deal with, and I'm not so much asking you this, it's more of rhetorical, but how do you deal with someone you tell, hey, I'm a stay-at-home dad, and they have a negative reply back to you? Because then you get this sort of like tail between the legs type thing of where like, I don't want to tell anybody else because I don't really care to deal with that reaction every single time. And I think for me, the way that I would go about that for myself and what I would hope other people would see as to be, I guess, a good example is the fact that when somebody has a negative response to you answering their question of what do you do for a living, that you just basically don't waste a lot of time on it. Don't waste the energy and the anxiety of it. If someone asks and you tell them and they have a negative response, just wash your hands of it and walk away. Now that sounds really easy to say in the beginning because
very easy to say.
Because who knows who that person is that asked that, in your life or whatever. It could be a family member or a really close friend or something like that. Probably easier to walk away and wash your hands from it from a like stranger or just some guy in the dad's group or whatever that you might be a part of. But honestly, like, I'm not going to waste my time and effort to try to explain it to somebody and try to get them to understand that I'm not devalued as a man for taking on this role, and that you have to come to some sort of understanding that this is it. Like they've got to figure it out on their own. And if they don't, one of two things: either one, they're just not a supportive family member or supportive friend. And, like, you have to basically from that point decide what you want to do with that. But two, like, honestly, like, you have to own what you're doing, and there's a passion that comes with it. Like, if you're passionate about it, you enjoy being home with your kids, like, it's a scream it from the rooftop type situation. And not so much like you don't have to like wear it on your sleeve and all this stuff, but if people ask, just be very, very forthcoming with it and be confident when you say it. I think that confidence coming forward and just saying, hey, I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad. I love the job. I've been doing it for this many years, and rattle it off just like you would if it was like, hey, I'm a computer programmer and I've been doing it for like 4 years at this company. And, it's got good days and bad days. And I hate having to tell someone like, just like turn it off and turn it back on and see if it boots up. I tell kids that all the time too. Just turn it off and turn it back on. But I think that that's the key. Like, confidence is the number one thing. Answer it with confidence. I'm a full-time stay-at-home dad. And if you got to tell them why also.
Own it.
I think that in a lot of ways, when you come at it from a confidence angle and not so much like put your head down and, kind of dig your toe into the sand and kind of draw circles while you say it type situation, you're going to get less reaction. And you might even put that person a little bit back on their heels in a way of like, whoa, like they really truly do like hold this position that they have in high esteem. So that for me, I guess, would be the first thing that I would say to somebody. Like, you've got to come at it with confidence. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that you hit the nail on the head with that. Just own it. Just realize, like you said, this is my job. I've been doing it this many years. I got this many kids, yada, 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 whatever you need to say. But to have it, heck, practice it in the mirror if you need to, if it's something that you're running into regularly. I think you and I both could probably, I know I'm an extrovert. You seem like an extrovert.
Oh, yeah.
If nothing else, we both have I think at least you have the self-confidence to stand up and talk and say things. A lot of people don't have that though. And I think that's another part of it, is because being able to go into a situation you don't know who people are, that's already kind of putting you off balance. have something ready that you're going to say. You know, if it's something that you need to memorize or what have you, do it. But get it and own it, and don't back away from it just because someone else is going to misunderstand what you do all day or how hard it
Yeah.
is. It's easy. You go do it. Here, do this for a month, and we'll come back and we'll
Right.
talk and see who's got their hair left. You know, who's had any sleep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's like, I went to the Dad 2.0 summit just this February of 2020, and I met a gentleman by the name of Ben Killoy, and he has a podcast called I think it's like Military Veteran Dad or something along those lines. I'm probably butchering it. I'll put it in the show notes so you guys can find it.
There you go.
It's a great podcast. He actually just he's done 100 podcasts recently. But when I met him, he came there because you know, like most of us, we come because we're influencers in some kind of way. And I got to spend an afternoon with him, just with a few other guys that we were connecting with. Like, hey, like, let's go walk the mall and go see the monuments. And we took our good friend Casey Palmer from Canada around and showed him the monuments, which was really cool. There was like this moment where I'm walking up the steps of the Lincoln Memorial with Ben, and we're talking and chatting, and I'm like, and the conversation comes up, man, like, hey, what do you do? You know? And he tells me right off bat, like, I'm a veteran. And I'm like, wow, man, like, thank you for your service. And he's like, I've been out of work for a while, and so I've been home with the kids. And I'm like, and my eyes just immediately like, bing. And I'm like, so you're a stay-at-home dad? And he looks at me, he's like, well, I'm unemployed right now. I'm trying to find something. This is like the situation. He went into like more detail about it. And I was like,
Sure.
like, I love the fact that, you know, you're working through this. But I want to encourage you to consider like really owning the fact that you're a stay-at-home dad. And I think that you might find that being home with your kids and knowing that you've come to an understanding of that you might find it a little bit easier to be at home. Because one of the things he was saying was he was having a hard time, like, sort of adjusting. And I think that a lot of dads have a hard time adjusting because they don't like grab onto that fact that they're in a new role. And it's okay to say that. You know, you don't have to say you're unemployed. We had this conversation and I just kind of called him out like right there on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And I'm like, all right, this dude's an ex-Marine. He could knock me out right now. All right, how are we gonna go about this? You know, and we walked around the rest of the time and checked out a bunch of different other things. And it was great. But then fast forward to DadCon at Home virtual. And he, after that, comes on and has like this little testimonial thing about how he's just like, man, after like hanging out with you guys and going to this, he's like, I own the fact that I'm a stay-at-home dad and I love it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool because now I've seen him post like on his Instagram feed stuff about that. Like, it was cool. There was one I actually saw, I think it was just today, and it was really neat because his daughter likes Mary Poppins. And so they come up with this really cute way of like cleaning up the room because, you know, how Mary Poppins like snaps her fingers.
Yep.
Things go into places. So every time he would snap his fingers, she would put something away or move something.
Yeah, nice.
And
nice.
he was talking about, you know, the stay-at-home dad life. And I was just like, this is really cool. And so I think that things like that just show sort of the walking through of the process. Because here's a guy who, I mean, what's more manly than a Marine veteran? I mean, just a Marine in general, honestly. And then to, you know, move into different avenues and then become a stay-at-home dad. I mean, sure, it's a huge transition, I would imagine. And so it's just neat to see. And I'm really proud of him. And like I said, it's just one of those things you just takes time to come into.
Well, and you hit it on the head. I think for me, the first time I really got it, and everybody, you know, anytime I ever talk about the National At-Home Dad Network convention, which, you know, I'm like a Labrador Retriever. I'll just go all crazy on you and just get ready. But the thing that I noticed immediately is in standing in this room with, you know, 75, 80 other people. I don't know. Everybody wasn't there yet. It was the pre-convention eve get together. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know what I was doing. But I had met probably 40 guys throughout that day over the last, you know, the time before that, the few hours before that, because I love to meet new people. So I'm going around and, you know, introduce myself to everybody. And every single one of them, none of them asked me what I did for a living, which was kind of expected because we're all in convention together. But it was such a different level of understanding. And it was always about, hey, how many kids do you have? You know, how old are they? You know, girls or boys? What do you got? You know, what are you dealing with right now? Oh, you know, that age, are they teething yet? Or are they potty trained? Or, you know, how's college or whatever it might be that they were going through. But that camaraderie that you get helps really solidify the fact that what you're doing is a valuable thing. That for me was a huge boost. It changed my entire outlook about what I was doing, because I was just fumbling along. I don't think I'd ever met another stay-at-home dad before that convention. And I had no idea if what I was doing was right. As a parent, you know, basically, but definitely as an at-home dad, am I supposed to be, why are they teething? Are they supposed to be teething now? Are they too early or whatever? Nothing I had any control over, but it was so good to have that. And that was a big part of me being able to walk around and, you know, total strangers, even like on the way home at the gas station, and, you know, hey, yeah, what do you do? And I'm a stay-at-home dad. Thanks for asking. You know, I really want to tell you all about it right now. And the confidence you get with understanding that you're a part of a big group of people that are other men that are just as involved as you are with their kids. They're just as willing to talk about their kids or talk about your kids, listen to the things that you're running into. Maybe not have a solution, but maybe at least have a, you know, like you and I sometimes say, well, all I can do is just raise my glass to you, buddy, and hope you get through it, you know, because of what you have to do in this job, you know?
Yeah. The other apprehension, I guess, to answering that question or whatever is like who, like the part of who it is. Like, and I think there's like generational people and that, you know, like different aged folks or whatever. But I feel like the majority guys, especially, they're seeing the change. They're seeing that fatherhood is different. And so, yes, there are going to be pockets of places where when you bring it up that you're at home with the kids, that someone's just going to have a hard time wrestling with that. And that's on them. That's not on you. And I think that, honestly, if you go into it with that mindset as well, they're going to have to deal with their own thing. This is who I am. And they're going to either accept me or they're not going to accept me. And if they're not going to accept you, I'm sorry, but, you know, don't waste your breath. Like, there's just no other way around it. I mean, I come from a small town, and luckily, even being there, when I go home, folks, they know me just because like it is a small town, and most of us were friends on Facebook, whatever. They see what I do and they know it, and so it's really not a big subject, honestly, most of the time. But some want to know, like, how do you do it? Like, I see you do these things or whatever, and I put myself out there in that way. But I think for anybody who maybe they're the only stay-at-home dad in their entire town, which I will tell you one thing, is probably not the case. If you think you're the only one in your own town that's a stay-at-home dad, someone's lying. I'm serious. I hear it all the time, and I see it all the time. I'm the only stay-at-home dad in the whole town. No, you probably just weren't at the same place at the same time as the other dad that also is at home with their kids. Yeah. Whether they are unemployed and they are looking for work and they're trying to, you know, figure that out, or they are the stay-at-home dad that's just, you know, like I said, you just miss each other or whatever. Like, there are other dads there in that town like you. Somehow, some way there is at least one other one, you know. And I think that I feel like one of the ways to really figure this out is like find the households that have a spouse that is either working their butts off in the medical field in some way, because more than likely there's a stay-at-home dad in that house, unless they figured out how to balance it all, which I'll tell you, like if they have, like, one, you need to hang out with that dad anyways, because he just needs another dad. Yeah, if you have a spouse in the medical field and you're working as well and you're balancing kids, yikes. I mean, I just know the heaviness, especially right now. Oh,
I couldn't imagine. Yeah.
But, you know, those dads who have the spouses that are in a high paying job or are, you know, under some sort of like massive time necessities, that kind of thing, more than likely there's going to be a stay-at-home dad involved in that as well. And sometimes too, it comes down to, you just got a dad that just doesn't want to say he's a stay-at-home dad. Like, he's just going to come up with similar things. Maybe he's a freelancer, you know, something along those lines. If he's home with the kids, he's a stay-at-home dad. And I think that just the change of the definition, like if you're the primary person at home during the day,
right,
you're a stay-at-home dad.
Yes.
Because you're the one taking care of them throughout the whole time. You know, think about it. Kids sleep, get up, eat, you know, go about their day, go to bed, just like us. But if you're the one at home with them, you're the stay-at-home parent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I highly, highly encourage any dads listening who think they're in that mindset of like, I'm the only one, really, really peek around the corner and look hard, ask around. Maybe it's just as simple as going to the library and saying, hey, like, I'm just curious. Have you ever seen another dad here during the day with their kids?
Yeah.
I've gone to libraries before where I've asked that question, and it's really funny because librarians are like, really? Like, that's an interesting question. I'm like, I'm serious. I'm curious. I want to know, because that's how, in librarians, like, they actually do keep a good timestamp in their head. Like, I actually asked one librarian one time, I asked them that question, and then I followed it up with like, well, what time did you see them in here at? Like, I'm just curious, like, not a stalker, I'm just trying to connect with other dads who have kids around my age, like, and most librarians or most anybody in that situation that's in a business like that, like, they're going to be like, oh, like, they're trying to connect, just like the moms are trying to connect. Cause I'm sure a mom would walk in, maybe do something very similar, And so just that kind of idea. And of course, I think it works better too if you have your kids with you and you ask that than it be by yourself. Sorry, just a little humor in that, a little like, creepy humor, I guess, in a way. But it probably works better if you've got your kids beside you and you ask that question than it is without, and the kid and librarians looking at you all kind of like weird wise. But yeah, I think that's another big way to do that. So that's my other encouragement. Like, step out, ask those questions, and see what all comes of it. Because honestly, I don't know, like, it's not so much that I'm annoyed, but I'm more just like, either you're not looking hard enough, or you're just in this place of a like, hey, like, I just want to be in this place like where I'm the only one. And and it's like, no, that's not the case. Typically there's at least another dad out there, even if that dad works like second shift and he's home all day with the kids. Same thing, he's a stay-at-home dad. Like, he's there. So and that's the thing too, like, I've run into guys who, especially here, like when I started up the dads group here in Cincinnati, who just were like, man, like, I really had zero connection with any other dads until I ended up finding out about this dads group in town, and it's like they came to a dad's night out, and voila, like, they got connected with a bunch of other dads all around the city, and they're coming out once a month for a dad's night out somewhere, or they've just connected through like the closed group I run, and they're conversing through that, or they've exchanged phone numbers, and so they're texting back and forth, whatever it is. But there are ways to build community within those kind of confines, and it's just, how much effort do you want to put into it? And as a stay-at-home dad, you are home with your kids, you have a little bit of time. I mean, granted, okay, don't get me wrong, laundry, dishes, all that other stuff, it's there. But in with that, like, there is the ability to hunt down and find other guys out there to connect with.
And even if you just have to make the time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you need this. You need the community. We all do. You need that definitely. Time off work.
So I think that we've pretty much exhausted this topic pretty well. I hope that everybody that's listened to it feels energized, maybe has a little fire underneath them now to take the step out there and do it. And I'll just say this as an action step. If you do this, I want to know about it. So either message us through anchor.fm and let us know how it went, or send us a message in the closed group and, tell us how everything played out. But I just want to hear how it went, good or bad. If you're like, you're full of crap, Brock, like, I don't, like, it didn't work at all. Fine. I want to hear it. Hey, I'll eat crow. I'll eat it if that's what it is. But I don't think that's the case. I think that you will find it. And maybe it's, maybe it takes more than one swing. I will say that, you're not going to hit the first home run out of the park. I'm sorry. So
yeah, I live out in a rural area, and there are none in my area. There's one that was at the school, and eventually I found, but I went, 20 miles down the road to a larger town. Oh, okay, there we are. And then 20 miles the other way, actually, and found another one at the YMCA. So you have to understand your need for it and make it a priority and go find them. I mean, this isn't a good time with the, quarantine and all that, but they're there, and there are resources you can use. Like you said, the library, if your kids are going through any type of school program, even if it's virtual, you can always ask, hey, just want to put it out there. Can we put a flyer up that any
Yes.
dads that want to, talk about or whatever?
Yes.
And they're almost always willing to help too.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So,
Put a flyer up with, I mean, use an email. Don't use your phone number or whatever. You don't have to put that out there, but just, grab a random email address that sort of makes sense. Like you can use like your town dads group or whatever it is, .gmail.com or @gmail.com or whatever. And then that way, you don't have to worry about like getting hounded on the phone or whatever. And it's just coming through emails. And you just do like that little 8x10 with like little snips where you like grab one of the things off there. That's a great way too, to just see if anybody snatched one up as well. But I think that that is a great idea. I like that a lot, Danny.
Yeah. And it's so simple too. And now again, quarantine has changed all the rules and what have you, but once we're through this, which I know we will be soon, I swear, someday it's coming. But just to be able to go to the school, go to the library, if you like me, we go to the YMCA, and it was really easy just to go in and say, hey, again, I'm not trying to be creepy. I'm not trying to be a stalker, but I'm looking for other dads that have kids that are taking care of their kids full time. And immediately they're like, oh yeah, there's a guy that comes in on, and I think I was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and he was Tuesday, Thursday. I mean, literally it was just, we were going on the wrong days.
Yep.
And he's a great guy. I mean, it was like, yeah, this is perfect. And our kids were about the same age. We could all, they were all swimming at the time, the indoor pool and all that. It was great. I'm like, man, such a huge relief just to have somebody else, that I can just say, yep, he's potty training or whatever it might be. It's great. It's such a big thing.
Well, even too, if those days don't match up, like I can't swing to change it or whatever, like then just connect with them and some other way and be like, hey, like, let's go bowling one night or something along those
lines. Here's my
like,
email. What do you like to do? Let's go do it. Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. I think that was, I really enjoyed talking about that, and I could probably go on and we could probably snowball into or rabbit trail down to other things, but
so many other things.
But I think we'll say that puts the can on top of the bucket for that one, or because the top on top. Yeah, I can't even talk tonight. That's how tired I am in some ways, but that's okay. I'm excited. But I hope everybody that was listening enjoyed this topic. And if you've got any questions or comments about it, please don't hesitate to leave us a message. And we will look forward to talking to you next time on the Home Dad Chat.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.